Yeah, that's okay.
Yep, all good stuff.
And we're live.
Okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Salem Finance Committee, the City of Salem Finance Committee. I'm Tom Anderson. I am the chair of this committee, and we will introduce ourselves as we go around, but I'd also like to welcome Nikki Varney, our newest city councilor, who is now on the Finance Committee, and we're glad to have you here, Mickey. So let's start with you introducing yourself and then going by ward order for the other two councilors.
By introducing myself.
Just say I'm Mickey Varney. That's all you have to say. Just
okay. I'm Mickey Varney, representing Ward 8. How's
okay.
that?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Virginia Stapleton, Ward 1.
That's Ward 5.
Thank you. I see I probably neglected to call the meeting to order, so I call this meeting officially to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the January 24th meeting, and I would hope to get a motion from either Jose or Virginia to approve the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Technically, you can't because you weren't here, but that's fine.
No. I can because I trust you guys.
Oh, yeah. Well, we understand that. That's not technical. That's moral. So I'm going to accept that. I use the chair's prerogative to say we've got a second for this. Let's just have a voice vote. We want it to have the roll called. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda of public comments. Do we have any member of the public who wants to comment before this august committee?
Not today.
Okay, or any day so far as I can recall. The next item are the action items, and we have no action items on the agenda. And is that still true, Mr. Eggleston?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so then we have the management update information items, two things, the quarterly investment report and the federal grant compliance audit. Let's go with the investment report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to go over it in depth. Please let me know if you have any questions. I would like to note, Councilor Anderson, you sent me a question a couple of weeks ago about any investments based in Russia, and I can confirm that none of the current investments are based out of Russia. So we're all good there. Just to confirm that.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and it's a good thing.
As far as the other investments, just economically, it's an interesting time right now. The Fed is raising rates. We're seeing some record inflation. This next year will be really interesting to see what happens, and of course, our investments will follow. So we'll make sure to keep you updated.
I would note in passing that interesting is the word that I was taught, and then I taught my children to say when they couldn't say anything nice about anything. It's very interesting. But you're kind of saying nice things about anything, because if the rates go up, we're going to earn more on our investments.
It's possible. It could have that impact, but it's on the other side of the city business, not investments. There's cost drivers.
Sure.
That'll easily offset any interest earnings.
Okay. Does any member of the committee have any questions of Josh on the quarterly investment report? Hearing none, let's move on to item B, the compliance audit. And before we get to this is just a confirmation. Didn't we have our auditor here at the last meeting to speak with us, Josh?
Yes, that's correct. So this was the piece that wasn't complete at that time. So the annual audit is due December 31st. We have a little bit more time on the federal grant compliance. And I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Matichek, our chief accountant, to walk through that.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So the audit of, we call it the SEPA, the schedule of expenditures, and it's for federal grant compliance purposes. And so it's due to be completed by March 31st. So we met that deadline. There's not a whole lot to comment on. No no findings or anything, no corrections. I think one of the most complicated parts was the ARPA funding, and we're still working through grant compliance on that. But the conclusion of this report was pretty smooth with our auditors.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions concerning the compliance audit?
Just one quick thing to note, Jenny mentioned the ARPA was the most complicated piece. This next year will be much larger portions of ARPA. So that'll be the big one to pay attention to for the next year.
Great, thank you. Is there any, Virginia has a question. Counselor Stapleton.
I do. So this is along the lines of ARPA and such, but what about the Build Back Better plan? Like though that dollars that's coming in, is this one, I guess maybe you could tell us financially how the city is kind of positioning itself to try and get some of these funds, but then also how does that work on the tail end of things? I'm guessing there's also going to be a lot of strings attached. And then is it a lot the same as the ARPA funds then?
Yes, very similar compliance requirements. Any federal funding comes with strings. ARPA was actually, the magnitude was a lot, but the strings are pretty minimal. I mean, there's certain requirements you have to hit. There's more when it's a specific grant for a project or something like that. ARPA was a direct allocation to the city. So we got, a particular amount. With the Build Back Better plan and other programs, it's not a direct allocation. We have to apply for funds and have specific projects. And staff in different departments are exploring those opportunities, and they'll be applying for different things. Some things historically we have applied for every year, and we'll continue to do so. But a lot of projects just aren't eligible. They don't meet the federal guidelines for eligibility, but we're continuing to look at those opportunities. A lot of things are still in flux. It's a lot of money. And, with any of these programs, there's always a lag to get it out from the federal government side, to actually distribute the funds. So I'm assuming it's going to take, a couple years, before we really see the program and what funds we might get from it.
Anybody have any other questions of Josh before we move on to the next item? It's continued business, and we don't have any continued business, do we? Yes or no?
Not currently, no.
Okay. And new business I have a question, but first, is there any new business coming from the staff?
No, not today, Chair.
I understand there was a meeting today of the bond, the council, and I'm seeing at least Counselor Stapleton's nodding her head, and from saying that she was going to text Counselor Varney between meetings, I suspect that you two were there and I wasn't. So I'd love to hear some sort of report, and I know Josh was there too. So maybe some report from the political side as well as the administrative side as to what they think happened today. So politicians go first, counselors go first. How did you feel about what happened?
Yeah, I'll start off, Mickey, and then you'll I'd like to model, I guess, give you some slack here. And also Counselor Gonzalez was there. So you have,
okay. Boy,
yeah,
you guys don't need me to help you any way, shape or form. So I didn't know Jose was there too. Great.
Yes. It was a really great meeting. It was long, but it was really good. We're to the point where we are really trying to understand the need for the different slices of pie and what they all entail. And then also trying to understand how it moves forward from here, and looking at the next steps as far as meetings on the, next Monday, which I don't even know the date. I think it's the 8th.
April 4th.
Oh, the 4th? God. Okay. So let me just say that what in my opinion, what we accomplished today was really getting a lot of understanding about the needs, and then kind of getting the high level, this is what the pie looks like right now. We are over budget right now with the list of projects by 46 million. Am I right, Josh?
47, but very
47 million. And so over the next week or so, our jobs is going to be to go through all of those projects, especially with transportation projects and the park projects, which is what we call squishy money, I guess, or a squishy pie, part of the pie, and try and find where we're going to have some give and take there, and then come back together next week. And then we're hoping to go to a council work session on the 11th and council on the 18th, if I have my dates right. No, sorry. Work session on the 18th, council on the 25th. Lord, it's been a day. So that was what I gained from the meeting today. Staff has a few things that they're going to come back to us with more information on next week. Marine Drive is one of those. That's a big project that we're going to need more information on. Some parks, there's a lot of, in the parks plan, there's a lot of parking lots. And I would like to see those parking lots taken out and more park amenities put in. So I'm working with staff on understanding the need and understanding, the crisis, like which one ranks highest out of all of these needs and how can we kind of get to a good compromise there. And then sidewalk repair was one of the buckets that we wanted to add. So that's what I took from it. Mickey, Jose, you guys got anything to add?
I can just, that was an excellent summary. For me, sitting there, not being as involved in this, obviously, I was more of a sponge and absorbing things, but I did have questions about the SDC funds for parks and how that coordinated with what we're doing. Because I know, what's the list? The 309 list?
309.
Okay.
309.
Okay. All right. Because I know a lot of the master planning projects, the phases are in there, and I didn't know if there was any overlap with any of those. So that was one of my questions. What I liked today was in our discussion, looking at prioritizing things like priority 1 versus priority 2, like the things that were really, really essential versus the other ones that we might be able to work with just a little bit. That was really helpful for me. And the idea of the buckets to just have some funding kind of set aside for certain things that kind of pop up. I mean, I can see the benefit of that. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with those.
Jose, do you have any additional comments?
It's one of those conversations. I mean, and you can probably ask for the reports so you can see the priority list, Tom.
Yeah.
But basically, it was what can we do with what we already have, with what we're going to have, and what we might or might not have. So it was just sort of like trying to figure out what the reality is going to be, which is hard to pinpoint.
Before we get to the staff report of anything, what was the discussion about any additional libraries, and also how the libraries could tie into libraries on the first couple floors and affordable housing mixed use above them? I know that at one point that was it was discussed with some favor in an earlier meeting. Did that continue in this meeting?
Yes, it did. And Josh, I don't know if you have, I think it's $7.5 million for pre-construction, and then 10 million set aside for affordable housing. And what we're hoping to do is do 2 branch libraries with affordable housing on top. But we would have the money to acquire the land for both, but only move forward with one of them. And so those are, I think, really great compromises as we're looking at the needs in the community, the wants of the community, but also, how do we get this this through the voters and actually done? So, did that answer it, Tom, or I don't know?
Yeah, that's good. I'm really just interested in seeing it still in the discussion. Because obviously, if we're 47 million or 46, who's counting over? Something's going to have to be cut.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, you have any summary of what happened today, other than what the counselors have said?
I think that was a really good summary. The one thing I would note, it's always a careful balance between having enough specificity so people know what's in the bond. So they can look in the ballot language and see what's there, and then having enough flexibility to respond to changes. So I think that's the careful balance we'll have to play with, these next couple of meetings, especially with parks and streets.
That's good. I as a lawyer, I agree with that. You need enough wiggle room that you can do other things, but you need to be specific enough that whatever you want to do comes underneath it. Any other comments on the bond meeting today? Is there any other business that needs to come before this council committee? Well, then I am going to declare this one of the shortest meetings on record, 15 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for not asking a whole lot of questions. And I declare this meeting adjourned, and I'll see the counselors and Josh at least. Are you raising your hand, Virginia? Okay. Good. I'll see the counselors at shorter time than we anticipate. So thank you all for your participation, and we'll see you next meeting of this one. I'm Elvis.
Bye-bye.